Okay. Talking Trade and Investment Global Webinar Series for July 2023. Okay, normally we have it every first Saturday of the month. However, because of Canada Day, we had to postpone to 15th. So topic today is floating Naira and new economic policies, renewed hope for Nigerians' non-oil exports. That is a question that we are hoping our guest speaker, Engineer Titus Olowookere, other speakers, discussants, Wilson Erumebor, and Dr Omolara Akanji. We are hoping the three of them combined together, they will give us perspectives of what to actually expect. So, as usual, I will employ all of you. I welcome you, and I will appeal that you please either put off your phone or reduce the volume. I think put it on silent at this time. And we expect that you be active participants. We are not just talking in this program. We are actually looking for solutions to work together. So I hereby welcome you once more on behalf of the team and introduce to you our host who is bringing us together every month. Just give me a moment to pull him up. Are you seeing my screen or you are seeing my face? Let me know, what are you seeing, my screen or my face?
Your face.
Okay.
Your face.
Thank you. Thank you. What do you see now?
Your screen.
Thank you very much. So now I'm bringing in our host, who is the convener of this program. And we are lucky to have this program still existing after how long and growing stronger. Femi Boyede is the convener. And who is he? As you know, is an international consultant, enterprise development strategist, is into private sector management, policy formulation and advocacy, organizational improvement. He has extensive experience in the international trade domain, passionate in export business development and trade promotion, proactive in public-private discussions on business environment, enterprise development, and trade reforms. Of course, he has traveled to numerous regions around the globe to support the exchange of products and services, as well as being the current president of Gonuna Global Services, Inc., Canada. Chief Executive Officer and Lead Consultant of Gonuna Ventures Limited, Nigeria. He has made very positive impact in Nigeria Non-Oil Export Conference exhibitions and award, Economic Community of West African States, ECOWAS Trade and Enterprise Network. He has served in the Federal Ministry of Industry, Trade and Investment and the GTA Trade Enthusiast Network, Canada. He's a diplomat and speaks many languages, including French, Hausa, Lingala, Nupe, and Yoruba languages. He has hands-on experience in managing export development programs and accomplished in expanding business service markets. He's a Nigerian Canadian, and as a member of the Nigeria and Canada Business Network, he promotes trade relations between Canada, the United States, and Africa with a focus on Nigeria. I hereby welcome Femi Boyede. Thank you very much. You have the floor, sir.
Thank you very much, Lady K. And
my profound thanks to the entire TATRADE team, that's the Talking Trade and Investment Global team, for making time out to ensure that not just participants, but the entire world. I'm sure you know that we are streaming live on YouTube and Facebook right now, that the entire world gets the benefit of expert and versatile experience such as we have in our resource persons today. So on behalf of all of us, I say a very big welcome and a special thanks for those who have religiously followed us over the past 2 years. I'm sure the team will think together and put up something to celebrate our 2 years anniversary, which actually happened in June. I think we had our first webinar in June 2021. This is June 2023. And we thank God who has kept us going up till now. Our aspiration, ambition, and vision, as you all know, is to fill the knowledge gap, is to provide those tiny, tiny threads and links that the glue that brings the practitioners into the international marketplace, the policymakers into the challenges faced by the players, such that the value chain is properly oiled. That's our ambition, and that's why all of these people have volunteered themselves over these several months to bring this on a monthly basis. Again, we permit me to quickly congratulate one of our very, very faithful, loyal resource persons, Dr. Omolara Akanji, a one-time director, Trade and Exchange Department of the Central Bank of Nigeria, who has recently been elevated to the board of the International Chamber of Commerce. It's no mean achievement. And again, for the motivation of my team members, I want to again also congratulate all of you, because slowly but surely, Talking Trade is making an impact and entering into the minds and households of where trade and investment should be talked about. Very soon, we'll be making big announcements of the partnerships that were proposed from various organizations based on their following what you do here every month. So please, your sacrifice and volunteerism is not in vain. And again, I think we should also let everybody know now that Talking Trade and Investment Global, just like Lady K said, is not just a talk shop. It has now been incorporated as a not-for-profit here in Canada, and we will welcome the establishment and inauguration of country chapters as time goes on. So we are surely making progress. I will leave the today's topic to the experts and to those who we have carefully selected and who have gracefully accepted our invitation. Engineer Titus Olowookere is the CEO of the USA Africa Trade Council. We have, again, like I said earlier on, Dr. Omolara Akanji, former Director, Trade and Exchange of Central Bank of Nigeria, and now a Director at the International Chamber of Commerce, as well as my dear brother and fellow soldier, Mr. Wilson Erumebor, who is a senior economist with the Nigeria Economic Summit Group, where we had also had the opportunity to interface in previous years as member of the Trade Competitiveness Incentives Policy Group of the NASG. So this is a robust partnership that will continue to grow. They are going to tell us how they individually see the floating Naira. It's been up, it's been running. It's one of the very first policy statements and actions of the present government, the new administration in Nigeria, and we want to see how that impacted at introduction, impacts as of today, and could impact as we go into the future of international trade in Nigeria, not forgetting that our passion here is for non-oil exports. So I will give you back Lady K, and you can, as you usually do, please lead us into today's session. Of course, participants will have the opportunity to bear their minds and make contributions. I am impressed by the quality and number of those who have registered for today's webinar. And then I can assure you, this is not just a Nigeria thing, it is cutting across the globe. Again, welcome, and please let's all have a wonderful deliberation today. The last thing is to again reassure you, as we have always done, that the sessions here is not just for the media visibility. We do have a team, back office, that does a summary of what we have done here and sends to the relevant ministries, departments, agencies, and authorities. This will not be different. It will get to the circle where they are needed. Thank you, and let's have a lovely time together.
Thank you so very much, Mr. Femi Boyede. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you so very much once more. And I will share my screen shortly. However, I don't really have so much to say. Again, you have done the introduction already. So just a little bit more. Okay, you are seeing my screen, I believe. So without wasting your time, we are going to bring in Engineer Titus Olowookere. I believe some of you already know that this is not the first time we are bringing here to be a speaker. We have some repeat speakers because of what they really have to deliver, what they have to offer. So we are so grateful to have you, Engineer Titus Olowookere, who is the President and CEO of the U.S. African Trade Council. And if you want to know more about him, please, we encourage you to go to femiboyedeconsulting.com, where you are going to see all our present and past speakers. You have the floor, sir. Thank you for being with us today.
Well, thank you very much, Lady K, and thank you to Family Consulting for inviting me to make this presentation. And thanks again for the time that we're all are together. It's not going to be a lecture. It's going to be more of a deliberation, a brainstorming, a discussion session. These are things a lot of us are already familiar with, which we are just putting out there in a different light. So allow me to share my screen quickly, and if you can see my screen now.
Yes, we can.
Okay, great. So thanks again for having me here today. The topic we're discussing today is the floating Naira and the economic policies, renewed hope for Nigeria's non-exports. As we are going to look at different aspects, the floating Naira is what it is, how it has come to be, the new economic policies, but they take a little dive into agri in particular and see the potentials of the floating Naira on the agriculture sector. And then we will do a call to action and discuss at length what we can benefit from this. Nigeria, we already know, we came from a originally we were agricultural economy. In the last 30, 40 years, it's been mostly a oil economy. We had a lot of oil, we export a lot of oil, we make so much money from oil exports, and for some reason, the non-oil sector was ignored and it deteriorated. And that's the one challenge we had over the years. But with the advent of new challenges, with the volatility of the oil prices, with the advent of electric vehicles, with the advent of self-propelling vehicles, the need for oil has dropped or is dropping globally. And that also affects Nigeria, definitely. Nigeria has been heavily focused on exporting oil. As you could see from this slide, in 2021, over 88% of the foreign trade was from oil. And at some point, it came to about 95% of foreign trade from oil, which shows, of course, over 100%. The bulk, the gap in foreign trade has been in the non-oil sector. Now, what is government doing about it? They try different ways. They try to change the color of the Naira. They try to put in two-tier foreign exchange system. They heavily regulated the forex markets, but there's been not much changes. So now we have the flooding of the Naira to help to promote non-oil exports and stimulate economic growth. What are the benefits of this flooding in Naira? Today, we want to look at specifically how this is going to give us renewed hope, how it's going to help in growing the non-oil sector in Nigeria. And this is something we really need to do. But first of all, what is the floating of the Naira? In the last few years, in so many years, we've had two tiers. The first tier, which is the official market. The government has a fixed rate for the exchange. And then there are the second tier market, which is also called the parallel market or the black markets, where the forces of demand and supply determine the exchange rates. Now we have a floating rate, floating the Naira, which means the Naira is now allowed to have its rate fixed by the forces of supply and demand in the markets. Currently, we have what we call managed floating rates, managed floating the Naira, but soon we're going to have a free floating of the Naira. Managed meaning there is going to be some regulation. The central bank can decide to inject some more dollars into the market. They might decide to buy some dollars just to make sure they have a little bit of the leeway in determining the exchange rates. We are not there yet, but we're going to get there. There are a couple of other policies the government had adopted, which also includes the abrogation of the oil fuel subsidy, and it's expected that we're going to have a lot of savings from these changes. What are the benefits of the floating rates? First of all, we expect to have a more enhanced export competitiveness, meaning Nigeria is now more challenged, is now more motivated to go into exports. When the balance of trade is uneven, when it costs a lot more to import goods and services, then we are forced to look inwards to make more from within the country and to export more goods. You know, it reminds me, most of you remember the sayings of Mahatma Gandhi in those days in India, when he banned importation of textile materials. And he said, if India cannot make her own clothes, let India go naked. And that made it compulsory for India to grow the export, to grow the textile market, to this extent that for so many years, India dominated the textile markets. India dominated the textile markets in Nigeria. And this is what a free floating of the Naira has the advantage of also doing in this case. And also we have the advantage of encouraging non-oil export diversification. The government has put in so many different intervention machinery to help on exports. This includes the export expansion grants, the export development fund, the what they call Anchor Borrowers Program, which was badly managed. But these are programs that actually help exports, even though they are not well managed. But if the entrepreneurs and exporters take advantage of these provisions, it will help them in diversifying their exports and improving on their revenues. A key beneficiary of the free floating of the Naira is the agri sector. We have so much agri potential. We have such arable land. We have so many agri exports. We have the means, we have the land, we have the people, we have the manpower. When we have a more effectively implemented free floating of the Naira, it helps a lot in the agricultural sector. It helps in the area of self-sufficiency, and it helps in exports of non-oil goods, particularly agri sector. Let's take a little dive into the agri sector. Which areas have the greatest potential? We have, of course, lots of cocoa in Nigeria. The economy of Nigeria, particularly the southern part of Nigeria, was mostly on what we call the cocoa economy. Every part of the southern part was exporting cocoa and making so much money from it. That was the crude oil in those days. Of course, we have other things: edible oil, grown Arabic. We have tubers, we have fruits, we have vegetables. We even have, of course, orange. But Nigeria has not done well in capturing the value chain of agriculture sector. Value chain meaning not just exporting the raw materials like yam or sesame seeds, but actually having some local value added, having some pre-processing of these agri materials, adding value, creating employment locally, and exporting either the semi-finished goods or the actual finished goods to the market. And there's so many examples of this. We have this yam tuber here, we have the value chain on the sesame seeds, the tomato there. We don't have to export tomatoes. We can actually package tomatoes in Nigeria and export them, even though the economy makes it a little challenging to do that. Now, we also have the cashew. US is a great consumer of cashew nuts. They come to Africa, particularly Nigeria, to buy the cashew nuts. We shortchange ourselves exporting these goods in this raw form. Orange. I was at Coca-Cola recently asking why we don't export, they don't buy orange from Nigeria or Africa. Most of the orange they purchase to make their orange drinks are either from Florida or even from China. When Nigeria, well, that's a long story, but of course, these are areas that can benefit from the free floating of the Naira. We have the cotton area, we have shea butter, which again, we're a major producer of. These are areas that benefit from the free floating of the Naira on the non-exports. Another major area, of course, is manufacturing and solid minerals. I mean, it costs a lot more to import goods in particular, to import manufactured products. When the exchange rate is in favor of the Naira, in other words, when it costs more to buy the dollar, then Nigeria is forced to grow its manufacturing sector and in solid mineral sector. And again, these are great potentials in this sector to lead to job creation, to lead to more employment. Of course, government also benefits because with the increase of activities in the non-oil sector, government gets more taxes from their production. So it's a win-win for both the man exporters and also for the governments. We want to realize that this might take time. Many times Nigerians, we want immediate returns on changes. We want things to happen overnight. It doesn't always happen that way. Economic changes, the effects of economic changes sometimes take a little more time to reflect. Sometimes it goes very quickly. But the necessary thing is to know that we're on the right track and we're taking the necessary steps to make these changes beneficial to the non-oil sector. The question is, are we just talking? Is it really happening? Is it going to continue to happen this way? The good news is we have some statistics from the National Bureau of Statistics. Every economic activity in Nigeria is sent to them so they can actually capture what is going on. And the records there show that in the first quarter of 2023, we have total exports valued at about $6 trillion, which is an increase of 2% compared to just the previous sector, the fourth quarter of 2022 at 6.3 trillion. This shows a paradigm shift. It's always been the other way around, but it shows something is working. But again, someone might say in Q1, there was no free floating of the Naira. That is true. But again, remember, when we talk about free floating of the Naira, it means merging the first tier and second tier markets such that the Naira value is determined by the forces of demand and supply. Beginning from like middle of last year, the exchange rate has been changing. The two markets are already getting close, and with the new administration is completely merged. So what started in Q1 before the free floats is indication that with the free float now, the increase in non-oil exports will be even more notable. And also we have the value of 57%. So this clearly shows that the free floating of the Naira is not just semantics. The changes are taking place. We believe this is going to really improve the non-oil exports. It's going to help the economy to grow quickly, as it's already beginning to do. It's going to make us a lot more competitive in the global markets. And this would be a win for the Nigerian economy, for individuals in Nigeria, and for even foreigners looking to invest in Nigeria. And it's going to be to the point that there will be no sector in Nigeria that will have no room to grow. If you do the right thing, we're in the right place, we're at the right time, talking to the right person, and you have an enabling economy, an enabling exchange rate system that helps the non-oil sector to grow. So that's pretty much what we want to discuss this morning. We want to have this emphasis that the paradigm shift in the Nigerian economy, particularly in the fiscal markets, and the fiscal sector, is going to be a plus in the totality of Nigerian economy, and particularly is going to be a plus for the non-oil exports, which has had a lot of decline for so many years. Thank you very much for listening, and I appreciate the time.
I'm sorry, I was on mute. I was speaking.
Fantastic.
Thank you so very much. You have set the stage today, as expected, for a very robust discussion. And as many of you must have seen when you were about to join, we put there that you should be ready to equally contribute. Like you said, we are not just talking, we are not just giving poor information. We want your active participation. Meanwhile, I'm going to go to the first discussant. You can see my screen, I believe. Can you see my screen? Please acknowledge.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, we can.
Okay, we just heard from Dr Olowookere, and our topic again is floating Naira and new economic policies, the new hope for Nigerians non-oil exports. So we now go to the second person to speak with us today, Wilson Erumebor, who has been robustly introduced as well. I just put in a little word that his career journey began in 2008, where he served as a research analyst and student associate at Value Frontier Limited, an economic research and consulting firm. So I bring you in. You have the floor now.
Yes, thank you so much for having me. I hope you can hear me. It's a pleasure for me to be here. I was here last year, and I should say that a lot of things have changed, particularly from the CBN side. Because I think we hammered on a lot of the ills that we had in the system over the last decade or so. But now I think there are a couple of changes, perhaps from the policy side, the CBN side, but still, if you look at the structure of exports, not so much has changed. And I should say also a thank you to Dr. Olowookere for that insightful presentation. I think that was, had lots of useful information and provided a very interesting perspective. For me, I'm not as optimistic as he was as far as exports is concerned in Nigeria, and in particular non-oil exports. Not because I do not like Nigeria, but perhaps because I think we haven't really started the work yet. We just made a move which I feel should have been done, many years ago by, removing the peg on the exchange rate, because, like we've argued previously, I mean, this encouraged lots of, arbitration. People were, taking advantage of those, the gap between the two rates, and of course all the other rates that we have. But I think, yes, this is something good that we've started on a good note, but the real work, I must say, in my view, has not begun. And when you look at the numbers that the main speaker showed, you would realize that yes, there's been growth in exports. There's been growth in exports in general, especially when you compare with the last quarter of the year. But then when you drill down, right, you would see that even with the growth, non-oil exports still account for 10% of total exports in Nigeria, as far as as at the first quarter of the year. And this is typically the share that we've had, if you do an average over the last 4, 5, 6 quarters. In fact, you would see that it's almost the same, right? Because if we focus a lot more on just non-oil exports, yes, you would see that growth, but we should be comparing that growth with how oil is performing. And I think it's also important to point that even now, oil is not really doing well as far as, our output are concerned, issues with theft and all of that. So when oil is still not doing well and non-oil exports is still accounting for just 10% of total export, I think we have a long way to go. And when you drill further down, you look at agriculture, like he mentioned, you would see that agriculture accounted for just 4.3% of total exports, in the quarter. 4.3% is, I mean, I don't know how else to say it, other than to say that that's ridiculously low. And when you even drill further to manufacturing, the data from NBS still showed that, manufacturing export was valued at 131 billion naira. And in terms of total export, it's just 2%, right? 2% of what Nigeria exported in the quarter goes to manufacturing, is manufacturing goods. I mean, that in itself tells you that, in my view, we haven't really started the work. Yes, it's the first quarter. The reforms were made, in the second quarter. But then I still think we have a long way to go as far as these shares are concerned. And if you also go further to even look at the kind of manufactured goods that we export, and I think this is where I would, anchor my main point on. You would see that, top 5, one of the first one there is on wrought aluminum alloys, 22.6 billion naira. And when you look at, maybe I should go to the next, vessels and floating structures as quoted by the NBS. The next is cathodes and sections of cathodes, The other is oil cake and, solid residues and co. And when you look at all of these, you would see that by measure of product complexity index, how sophisticated are these products? What does it take to produce these products? You would see that they rank extremely low on the PCI index. In fact, for the first one, which is the aluminum, you would see that it's 3,609, 3,609, on the PCI index. That means what we should be looking at, how complex, what is the sophistication of these products, that we export as manufactured goods. So on the one hand, 2% of total exports as manufactured goods is really low. On the other hand, we're looking at the fact that the kind of goods that we even manufacture is also extremely low. So I think these are, and so as much as we celebrate all of the positives that come with a flexible, a managed floating exchange rate, which again, by the way, still deserves or demands a lot of clarity as to what role the CBN will play going forward. Just recently, I spoke at the Chatham House event, in London, and in that event, we had all of the big fund managers from Goldman Sachs, and all the likes. They were seated in the hall. And one of the key concerns they had was, yes, we've made progress with reforms like this, but what is the next step? Who knows what's the blueprint? Who knows what the next step, what the CBN will do next? Can we still, have we moved to the point where there's confidence on the economy and we can bring in say $1 billion, $2 billion, worth of investment into Nigeria? So those are the questions that these investors, fund managers are asking. And as far as I'm concerned, the answers are still not yet known. Perhaps maybe some more clarity will come as we proceed along. But I think, there's still that clarity that needs to be had, as far as foreign exchange reforms are concerned. And the other thing, maybe I should wrap up with this, is how ready are our businesses to take advantage of the opportunities that a devalued or weakened exchange rate presents? I think that's one key area, that I think we should, focus more on, because, surveys show, if you read one of the reports by Fate Foundation, 64% of small business owners in the manufacturing sector, they said they were aware of at least one business that shut down, in the last 1 year. So some of our businesses are struggling to cope with, the business environment. Even awareness on AFCFTA, for instance, a survey that was done some years back or a few years back, showed that about 75% of businesses that were interviewed did not even know what the AFCFTA was. If you go to the manufacturing sector, that share is even way lower. And many of our informal traders do not really, understand these trade deals. So we're saying, how export ready are Nigerian businesses to take advantage of this devalued or weakened Naira? So I think I would anchor my points there. And maybe I should just conclude by saying that, one thing with Nigeria is anytime we have a problem, I think we always seek the easy way out, of that problem. So for instance, we had issues with oil revenues. We couldn't, oil was being stolen. We couldn't raise more revenues. What did we do? We ran to the CBN, tried to raise, borrowed 22+ trillion Naira within a short period of time from the CBN. Now, in fact, there's an act in a bill in the National Assembly. They're trying to raise how much the federal government can borrow from the CBN, from 5% of its previous year's revenue to 15%, right? So I think we need to start talking about that reflection point. At what point do we have to do things have to get too bad for us to realize that non-oil export is the way to go for Nigeria? So I still feel like this exchange rate thing, as much as it comes with opportunities, if the inflows do not come in, the government will, by next year, I'm very sure, they will go to the Eurobond market and borrow money in dollars to get inflows. So I've not yet seen that much commitment for the government to see that, look, non-oil export is what has led many countries, particularly the East Asian countries, to where they are today from where they were, 30, 40 years ago. And that is where we need to start moving towards. So all of those industrial related reforms, trade policy, Nigeria's trade policy has been under review for over a decade. We don't know where it is. No industrial policy as we speak. So many things that I feel would impact the hardcore businesses, the guys that run businesses. We're not talking yet about those reforms. And I think those are the critical reforms, our ports, standards. The presenter mentioned oranges. What is the level of standards that, that go into producing those products? So I don't think having a devalued currency alone means we're in El Dorado, or we will get to El Dorado. I think all of those critical works that we need to do, we should start them now. So I think I should stop here. Thank you.
Wow. Thank you so very much. Yeah, different perspective. I'll call on Haruna Ibrahim. Is a member of Talking Trade and Investment Global. Please, you have the floor to summarize what has been said so far.
All right, thank you so much, Lady K, for the awesome job that you're doing. I hope you can all hear me.
We can.
Okay. So I'm going to start from Engineer Titus Olowookere. He started his talk by talking about comparing the Nigerian economy. It makes reference to the 2021 when the oil has accounted for 88.75% in foreign trade, but only 7.49% contributed to the GDP in quarter three. They also make reference to the agricultural sector, which was much more smaller, 29.94%, and the trade 14.93%, and ICT was 14.2%. And when you look at ICT, compared to a company like India, for instance, their ICT is far up than that. Now let's talk about the policy. He mentioned the floating of the Naira. What would that help us to do? In terms of, it's going to help us to promote the non-export, and also it's going to help to accelerate economic growth. It's also going to make our non-export to be more competitive in the international market. But again, he also takes a reference to what will actually the policy from the government help us to do. In looking at the policy, it mentioned about reducing taxes and also improving infrastructure. Is going to help to promote the ease of doing business. Imagine pumping money on the infrastructure. Farmers can have good road to move their product to the city or to export. And also you can also have more money in the hands of the farmers to buy more farm input, agricultural inputs that's going to help them to be able to have greater output. He also mentioned that it's going to help to create a more favorable ecosystem for the non-oil export. In terms of the competitiveness, he said floating the Naira is going to make the Nigerian export to be more affordable and also to be more competitive. He look at the advantages in some of the sectors. Number one is the agricultural sectors. When you look at Nigeria today, a lot of farming, subsistence farming. Subsistence farming is when farmers just grow enough that can feed themselves and their family, right? But now with this pumping more money into the agricultural sector, it means that we can actually encourage investors to actually invest in the agri sector, but they know that there is support from the government, right? And they can grow more of those crops. That's going to help us in the that we can actually hit the people and actually export more. He also said this policy is going to benefit the manufacturing sectors, also the solid mineral sectors. This will also benefit more from this policy. He also said the exporters can expand their market. They can grow their market. And in doing that, it means that they can realize return on investment, right? It's also going to help the country to reduce the trade deficit. And what does this mean? It means that it's going to encourage economic growth. In summary, or in conclusion, the non-all export sector, according to him, stand to benefit more from this floating of Naira. In addition, we expect to also see an increase in the agricultural manufacturing activities, as well as job creation, which means that there'll be more revenue for the government. And he also gave us a kind of warning that we got to be patient. This is not going to happen overnight. Everyone has to be patient, and it's going to take time before this thing can start working well for us. I'm going to go to Mr. Wilson, the second guest speaker. Mr. Wilson, who's an economist, actually a lot of warnings, a lot of being careful in the policy, right? You notice the policy change from the CBN, but it's a good one, but we actually expect more, right? He stated that he's not optimistic about the new policy toward the non-export, right? So we have to actually wait to see how this is going to actually work out. He thinks that we have more work to do in implementing the policy. Government needs to do more. Actually make sure the policy is well implemented. If this can be done, it's going to be helpful. He said some questions from investors in one of the conferences that he attended. Investors and the fund managers, they're asking questions, right? What's going to be the next step? Is they're asking questions about what are the expectations from the CBN? What is CBN going to do next, right? So they want to wait and see if they're going to continue with on this good note, right? And he also questioned about how export ready are our businesses to take advantage of this policy. So that means we have to do more work. That's going to help them. He also talked about how government is running to borrow more money from the CBN, and a good research for me is asking, so why do actually government borrow money from CBN, right? And there's so many reasons for that, ranging from desire to accelerate capital spending, to a policy economic stabilization. And again, it's also to help to reduce taxation. Instead of taxing more people to actually get money to spend, they want to the federal government to actually borrow, to the CBN to borrow money. And he mentioned the bill in the House of Assembly. Okay, this is a brief summary of the prospectus for me. Thank you.
Oh, thank you so very much. That is our chairman for you. He's a very detailed note taker. Thank you for this. Now we are going to go to our last speaker, but before then, do I have you, Sheyi? Thank you.
Would like to have your business product or services featured during our TATUC webinars or inside our webinar flipbooks? If so, we have a great opportunity for you to get your products or services in front of a large audience. You can place your adverts to be featured live during our Talking Trade webinars, which we also live stream on Facebook. Our TATUC webinars host a huge audience from across the globe. Each year, our webinars run from February to November on the first Saturday of every month at 5 p.m. West Africa time. Placing your ads in our webinar flipbooks will expose you to a global audience and extend your reach, as our flipbooks are sent to our entire database of contacts and shared on our social media platforms. We have limited spaces, so make sure you get in touch with us to book your space. Please email femi@femiboyede.com for further details.
Thank you so very much. Now I'm going to bring in our last discussant for the day before we leave the floor open for everyone to contribute. So, and I want to encourage you, I noticed that so many of us don't even know about the existence of our website where you can see information. So today I'm deliberately just reading a little so you can go there and see the people that we have. Dr. Mrs. Omolara Akanji. She has worked with the Central Bank of Nigeria as a director of the Trade and Exchange Department with the responsibility of ensuring the management of the foreign exchange market and efficient conduct of the trade regulations, such as the International Trade Finance, Trade Malpractices Committee, and the conduct of the Wholesale Dutch Action and Liberation. Before I bring her in, let me stop sharing my screen for a second. And then I will share my screen once more. Just a moment. Mrs. Dr. Omolara Akanji. Currently, I think it was mentioned earlier, if I'm not mistaken, but I want to show it to you on the screen. Okay, so let's go. Yes, so we have to congratulate her as she comes on board to speak, because we are very proud at Talking Trade and Investment Global, as she mentioned that we are part of the reasons why she got this appointment. She's now an ICC, that is International Chamber of Commerce, elect. She has been elected to its executive board. The International Chamber of Commerce headquarters is in Paris. They have announced the election of Dr. Omolara Akanji as part of the 5 new board to its 27-member executive board. Please, I bring in Dr. Omolara Akanji. Congratulations is in order. Please share your congratulations on the chat forum. Thank you, Dr. Akanji. You have the floor, ma'am.
Thank you, Lady K. Thank you very much. I appreciate that Greek, and I think we are making impact. The discourse had been very interesting. The floating of Naira and its impact on trade. I want to thank Dr. Olowookere and Dr. Wilson for their submission. I think we are in a kind of whirlwind, which we need to be careful about. A situation where we are not looking at the prices that rules an economy, and we just go on and float Naira. As much as it is going to, it seems to be helping the non-oil export, but it has its own damaging effect, even on the non-oil exports. Because if you look at the 3 prices that runs an economy, we look at the interest rate, we look at exchange rate, and we look at the inflation rate. As we speak, inflation rate had gone over 22, 23 point something percent. As at May, it was 22.41%. And it has not, started going down. In developed economy, the inflation rate is, it's not even getting to double digits. So in the cost of production of all these non-oil commodity that you want to export, it's very high. And so it has a negative impact in the pricing of that commodity in the importing country. Any commodity from Nigeria that is exported from Nigeria is not competitive because of the cost of production. That is one. The second point is the fact that financing of entrepreneur. Majority of those who are in the export are in the informal sector. Financing, getting loan from the bank is not very easy because the interest rate had gone up double digits. Even with the support from the central bank and all that, a lot of corruption was alluded to that. But that is not what we are discussing now. What I'm trying to emphasize is that the cost of production has not helped the pricing of our non-oil export in the export market. Leaving that the condition, I also want to talk about not just floating of Naira. I want to talk about the economic and monetary policy, because all these policies had to, and trade policy. Fortunately, the trade policy for 2022 to 2027 had been approved, but we need to digest and see how that will impact with the new policy of exchange rate, because it is not just commodity market. It is also the markets that comes, from other countries to Nigeria, trade by my neighbor's country. You need to know that when you are exporting to Ghana and Ghana is importing from you, you have a kind of total, total trade that is beneficial to the two countries. So for me, I just want to say that we need to also look at the economic policy and the monetary policy. Apart from the monetary policy, we also need to look at the rationale for why the currency is being floated. The rationale that that has been brought into situation is that the economic rationale for a floating exchange rate as against fixed exchange rate is that the floating exchange rate adjusts automatically and enables a country to dampen the effect of shocks and foreign business cycles and to preempt the possibility of having a balance of payment crisis, because we are already having that crisis. We have a lot of debt in foreign currency, and now our balance of payment crisis has become so huge. So floating currency has an advantage in that direction. However, they also endanger unpredictability as a result of their variability, which can render business planning risky because you don't know what price you're going to use to do your production. So it's a risk as it were, because the future exchange rate, during the period of your processing has not been determined. So more importantly is the fact that a floating exchange rate will work perfectly where the exchange rate and the monetary policy and free capital improvement, capital importation is allowed. If you allow capital importation and then you have a free monetary policy, then you float your exchange rate, it will work perfectly well, because like I said, three prices rule the economy. You cannot fix the three prices, or you cannot allow the three prices to just be running a riot. So that is why a floating exchange rate will work perfectly well where you have free monetary policy and capital movement, capital importation. And we have seen that capital importation happening, but it is not the kind of capital importation that we want to see. It's like a fly-in, fly-out importation of capital, because they just come into the stock market, buy the cheapest stock, and when it is matured, they fly back their money. So that kind of thing is what we should look at. The direct investment flow is not, capital direct investment flow is not yet coming into this economy. So this is my own area of discussion, because I need to buy away from the non-oil impact and whatever. Production, cost of production, monetary policy impact, and that foreign direct inflow as it were in the economy. So the expected process to float Naira had not been done. It had not been done. We just had pronouncements and everybody went haywire. The process had not been put in place. So it is like a jigsaw, because central bank itself cannot even, they are not even yet ready. They don't know what they are doing as it were. You recall that they banned Bureau de Change. Bureau de Change is the third level of the market. I want to say that. And if Bureau de Change can be restructured and make it to do what it's supposed to do, like Travelex is doing in UK, we will have stability with free floats that we are putting in place. But because of the corrupt level of managing our economy, most of the people that are supposed to be supervising this Bureau de Change are also buying licenses and are trading in Bureau de Change. So the money is not moving to where it's supposed to move. Secondly, the diaspora fund could have supported the Bureau de Change so efficiently and effectively. As we speak, I want to say that, I don't have the figure here, I want to say that Naira is undervalued. It's undervalued. And, you know, I'm not talking from the strength of numbers now, but I know that the Naira rate that we are running now is not the actual rate. And a lot of people are making money. Those who have stock dollar, they are making money out of this depreciated Naira, heavily depreciated Naira. What the impact that heavy depreciation is supposed to do for export is not happening, because the cost of production of a pound of cocoa is too high. There's the infrastructure is not there, and the port services is poor. So we need to, you know, sit down and do everything and look at all the policies dimensions so that none will somersault, and look at the prices that runs the economy so that we can have an effective impact on this policy that can and should help the economy. I think I will stop at that. Thank you.
Wow. Wow, thank you so very much. As usual, we don't expect less. Thank you for your contributions.
Thank you.
Femi Boyede, you want to make a comment before we bring in people who have raised up their hands to contribute?
Oh, yes, thank you very, very much, Lady K. And by extension, thank you also to Engineer Olowookere, to Mr. Erumebor and Dr. Omolara Akanji for the very attention that you paid to the respective angles that you spoke on. So I think from my point of view, I think we need to understand, and that was made very clear by both Dr. Akanji and Mr. Erumebor. Exchange rates cannot successfully and reasonably be legislated. They cannot be commanded into being. They cannot be fixed by government fiat. Let's start off by commending the CBN for, first and foremost, rapidly closing something that benefited less than 1,000 Nigerians out of 200 million. The different exchange rates was targeted at enriching. I don't have the actual figure, but I know that there are less than 1,000 Nigerians who day in, night out were benefiting from the multiple exchange rates. The former CBN governor, Sanusi Lamido Sanusi, made this assertion as far back as 2020, that people just sit down on their phones, get official dollar at official rate from the CBN and transfer him to the free funds market. And you saw that people were making 350 Naira difference between the I and E window and what was trading in Zone 4 or in Ikeja. And for that, we should celebrate the current administration and the central bank. However, my understanding and expectation is that while this has been done, there needs to now be an immediate emplacement of interagency engagement, wherein the Central Bank of Nigeria can get feedback as expressed by our resource persons this morning. If I took every point I have here, I will take time, and I have actually been on the back of previous speakers as part-time management. However, permit me to give you an example from the Canada market. As of 2019, Canadian dollar to Naira was about 360, 370, maximum 390. As at that time, a kilo of gari from us, the bulk importers, to the wholesalers here was accepted. They bought from us, the bulk importers, at between 74 and 80 Canadian cents per kilo. As at 2019, a kilo of gari in Nigeria was between 140 and 173 Naira per kilo. So we barely managed to get between 5 and 7 cents per kilo, depending on what you imported here. Okay, now we have a floating Naira, where a Canadian dollar goes for between 630 and 650 today. You may say that it is very, very positive and profitable for the exporter because he gets more Naira for his single dollar. However, you need to also think back that the person, the exporter who is going to earn this many Naira for dollar now needs many more Naira to buy that unit that I was buying at 143 Naira. Today, a kilo of gari in Nigeria is at least 470 Naira. The price here has not changed. I'm still going to sell to Mosaic or to Davisol. I'm still expected to sell at a maximum of 80 Canadian cents. So until the central bank that evolved this policy is made to understand that there are so many other factors that play in international trade, everybody will be misled or will be easily led into believing that the exporter is now earning more Naira. Let us look at export from the 4 wheels of export. The supply base, 1, the market where it is sold, 2, what joins them together, that is the logistics, 3, and 4, the trade financing, which Wilson mentioned a lot about. So policy, for it to be robust, needs to have collective ownership. And for it to have collective ownership, it must evolve from an involvement of everyone who has one role or the other, or who will have suffer or benefit one way or the other from policy. I'll rest it here for now and come back later, but please let us remember also that, and I thank the 3 of you for pointing it out quite clearly. It is not enough to float the Naira, whether it is managed floating or any other manner of floating. It's not enough. The foreign exchange rate of a country's currency is determined by that country's performance in the international market. And the point here that we have been making, even before the Buhari administration. This is an advocacy of close to 30 years. Non-oil export remain the only solution to Nigeria's economic woes. And we are hoping and very, very eagerly awaiting the understanding of this by the Bola Ahmed Tinubu administration. Thank you very much. I rest for now.
Thank you so very much. I'm going to be calling on the people whose hands are raised. I say Kayode Nuraito, Titus Olowookere, Kola Deribibi. Before then, let me read from Kazim Bello. He said, Madam insisted, I'm sure he's referring to Dr. Akanji. Madam insisted that Naira is grossly undervalued. I'm simply wondering and want to ask Madam, what are the parameters of yardstick of reflective quantitative analysis that results in that conclusion that Naira is undervalued? Secondly, what would Madam consider as a reference Naira exchange under the current circumstances? You want to answer, Dr. Akanji? Are you there?
Okay, thank you, Lady K. I'm looking at the purchasing power parity, which the arithmetic I cannot do online, but let me just use a simple example. Take a can of Coke, the same volume, the same volume, the same production. A can of Coke that you buy in London, and the same can of Coke, the same content, the same production, the same company. The purchasing power parity is different, and it has become so widened in this dispensation. It was a bit close in the past, but it has become so widened. And what is causing the wideness is because of our own cost of production here. The lack of infrastructure, no electricity, nothing. And the producing unit here would rather import, bring what they produce in UK to come and sell here. So it is a whirlwind. It is a whirlwind. And in those days when you want to calculate purchasing power parity, you take a basket of commodities that are compatible, that are similar to what you have in your economy, and you put it on a weight. You weight it and get a particular figure. I don't have the luxury of numbers now, but I know what I'm saying. When I was sitting, we use purchasing power parity to calculate what will be the exchange rate. That is the upper and lower rate that we put in the market. So that's what I'm saying. The second point is, what was the second question? If you can help me.
Just a
the
moment.
first was how do I get at the undervaluation?
Yeah, and the second one is the reference Naira exchange under the current circumstances. Secondly,
The reference Naira under this current dispensation, it's when when the central bank puts enough liquidity, when you know the balance of payments, the external balance of the economy, and that the economy can reduce its debt profile, which they are currently doing. I read that the Eurobond had been paid off. Then you would look at the liquidity, your deficits, your net deficits in your balance of payments, and that statement of deficit is sent to central bank on a daily basis. At the end of a close of business, you get the position of your balances as per latest advice. So when you see that balance, you can play with that balance. It's like a treasury management. You play with that balance to be able to ensure that your currency is not too overvalued or too undervalued. And at the same time, you encourage foreign direct investors to know that when they bring in their money, they can always take it back when they want to take it back. So the confidence in the economy brings more liquidity into the economy. I hope I'm making sense.
Thank you very much.
I didn't want to be too technical, but I just.
Yes, thank you for breaking it down. Okay, I go to Naira. I see your hand up. Please unmute yourself and put on your camera if possible.
Good afternoon here in the UK, London. Thanks for the opportunity to make my little contribution. I thank the previous speakers for they have been very educative on everything. I'm going to start by the new government policy. We should at least thank the new government for being sensitive enough to start on this on the move that he has made so far, whether on the Naira exchange or the oil. The situation in Nigeria has been such that things have been bad for too long. We cannot expect to take 1,000 steps backward and expect it to be restored within 2 strides. It has started well, but like one of the speakers said, there's still a lot to be done. There's still a lot to be done. We just wish God would give him the wisdom to undo it accordingly. Take, for instance, the small-scale industry in Nigeria is almost as if it's not existing. I could remember in Britain towards the late 80s and early 90s, when the economic situation in the United Kingdom was very bad. What they did was to encourage small-scale industries. They encouraged them through financing and some other things. But in Nigeria, it's almost as if it's not existing. Where are the areas in those days? Where are these industries, small-scale industries in those days? I remember in one of when I was still in the office, one of our management training, we analyzed and discovered that for somebody to start manufacturing industry in Nigeria, it will take 20 years. That is for the company that's even survive and exist. It will take 20 years for return on capital employed to be regained. 20 years. Whereas people now diverted the fund that's supposed to have started industry, if they divert it into politics and they happen to sponsor a phase that become successful, within 6 months, the money invested in that person will be recovered times 10 within 6 months. So those things has discouraged a lot of people from starting industry in Nigeria. So that one need to be restored, to be brought back. The bane of any economy is the small scale industry, and that's not existing in Nigeria at all. Not only that, look at our export. That we are talking about. There's nothing like export guarantee scheme. There should be export guarantee scheme, particularly for the exporters, because that will give them the confidence to start exporting things. I think that's one thing needs to be looked into. Thank you very much.
Thank you so very much for your contributions. I will call John Isemede before Titus Olowookere. He had his hand up before every other person, but he was kicked out. So please, engineer, be patient. John Isemede, kindly unmute yourself.
Yeah, thank you very much. Yes, I just did. Thank you very much. I just want to make a response to some of the contributions made earlier on. My co-speaker mentioned that the contribution of non-oil exports to the general economy is just about 10%, which is true. But the one thing we must realize is the changes to the economy would not be overnight. Nigeria economy has been stagnant. The non-oil sector, rather, has been stagnant for so long. It's been neglected because it was easy to make money from oil exports. Now, in the last 5 years or thereabouts, there's been a massive push to grow the non-oil sector. It takes time to do that. And what is relevant and important for us to know is that we are on the right track. If we still have oil, if the number keeps shrinking and there is no positive change in the non-oil sector, then we're in trouble. You also made another point that the small business in Nigeria, they die very quickly. I must mention that this is not just a Nigeria phenomenon. In US and most other countries, it is what it is. The Bureau of Labor Statistics in US show that about 20% of new businesses fail within the first 2 years they open, 45% within the first 5 years, and up to 50% in 10 years. Same thing with most other countries because they're not used to trade. They're not used to doing business. They are retired people just starting anew, or they are too young to understand the economics of scale or the economy itself or the style of doing business. So we don't expect realistically that every business or even a significant number of the business in Nigeria or anywhere in the world will succeed in the first few years. I want to align with what Mr. Boyede mentioned earlier on, that the exchange rates of the country is not the only determining factor of the economic prosperity of the country. It's just one factor to measure growth or to stimulate growth or to improve on the foreign earnings of the country. It's just one. Nigeria's economy is very complex. Every economic policy has the pluses and the minuses. The policies themselves, we are not short of ideas on how to make changes. What we lack in most cases is the strategies for implementation, is how to make things happen, is the leadership that's very decadent, that's very corrupt. I mean, look at the Anchor Borrower program to help farmers. Look at the other intervention programs from the NEPC. These programs work beautifully on paper, but then those who implement them don't implement them correctly. So I've always been an advocate of having the right leadership to make positive changes. So we shouldn't, just to round up, we shouldn't look at any economic policy, any economic activity in silo. We must look at things holistically. We must remain positive and hopeful that even if the changes are not happening now, they're going to happen. We're on the right track. And each one of us will do his or our own parts to make this succeed. And that's one of the reasons I guess we're here, to be all equally informed, encouraged, and motivated to succeed in our respective businesses, regardless of the vagaries in the economy of the country. Thank you.
Thank you so very much. And please, today is really very interesting. We are supposed to have 2 more minutes, but we have to extend by just a few minutes. So that means each person that needs to make any comment now, please limit it to 2 minutes, please. Okay, the next person is Johnny Semede. Can you please unmute yourself? Johnny Semede, if you can hear us. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much.
I call him the senior partner of Talking Trade.
No, the issue is that we are not ready to go. I have some of my colleagues who are still here. Jeremy is here. Ziagu is here. Not that we are retired, but things are not working as expected, in line with what we have put in, so that we will not leave the children suffering. First and foremost, let me go with Mrs. Akanji on her position. There is nowhere in the world where people don't work on their currency. But the issue, which first of all ask ourselves, how did we get here? When the monetary policy was modeled up with the fiscal policy, and selling and buying of the Naira became the easiest job to do in Nigeria. Even when exporters were crying that we cannot use about 15 different rates, we were asked to export at one rate and pursue ABC, the shipping charges and all that. That was where we got the whole thing wrong. When Madam said that the Naira is overvalued, it is neither here nor there. But the truth of the matter is that we cannot hold up that the Naira is overvalued. One thing we should put first in our mind, when we were using the pound shilling pence, the dollar was 25 kobo to the 25 pence. And when the Naira was introduced, it became 50 kobo. Why today 800? The first thing we should ask ourselves is the rate at which we are treated in Naira and buy and sell it on the street. Vis-a-vis, we are not producing anything. If a country like Nigeria, that the GDP at independence was from agriculture over 51%, why are we crying today? And when you look at the convergence, the first thing we should think about is that when you are talking of convergence of currencies, like the one we are pursuing under the ECOWAS project, we have been on it since 1975, and we know the problem. But we are not talking of currencies now, we are talking of exchange rates. If we are now converting exchange rates, I can give you about 12, but others have to talk. If we are now converting, what have we put in place for us now to generate the needed forex? Have we removed the billions outside the banking hall into the banking listing, that if I'm traveling today, that they will stamp this into my passport like what we used to do in the past? The gap is still there. How do we manage what is on the street? Secondly, when we are thinking of export, the first thing we should think about is that what of the cost of raw materials. You have to source your raw material with 800 US Naira to the US dollar. You talk of distribution, you talk of power. These are some of the things. Then finally, the strategy based on what Olowookere has said. There is no strategy, there is no template for us to engage and to change the tide. Finally, what are the benefits? The only benefit I can see is that if we can withdraw the excess or the money people cannot account for in circulation, and the final that is what the president has put in place concerning the commodity board. I have been on it since 1988. If that is the way, then exporters cannot have hope in the export of agricultural produce. If we now say fiat, and we are now merging what we cannot manage, what we cannot measure, we cannot manage. The money is in the hands of where it belongs, where we had this initial problem. Thank you.
Thank you so very much. Doris Ogbodu puts on the chat, good evening, and thanks for these insightful presentations. Please, what is the way forward for SMEs in Nigeria in view of the stifling policies of government and the resultant astronomical increase in the cost of production?
Are you asking me, ma'am?
No, let me take that quickly in view of our time. Doris Ogbodu and other people, 2 levels of answers. With the volume of questions on the chat box now and the hand still raised, we may not be able to take every question one by one. However, if we are talking about implications for SMEs and practitioners, please feel free to visit our YouTube channels for previous editions. We have had the DG of Smedan, we have had other experts who, we had Fidelis Onu, who was very, very comprehensive in the breakdown. We had Oscar Macaulay and a host of others. So these are not things that we will take one by one again today. You can refer to previous editions. And then the second answer is we can continue this conversation on our WhatsApp group platform, which I'm sure that Lady K will lead us, will expose so that we can join. Thank you.
Thank you so very much. Kolade Bibe, please unmute yourself and make your contributions. Kolade Bibe, you're next.
Good evening, all. Thank you very much for all the presenter. It's quite an interesting topic. My own area which I'm looking at, is when Dr. Olowookere talks about the competitiveness of the export market. Yeah, though she corrected something talking about we have to look at it holistically. Yes, we have to look at it holistically, but in a country whereby we still depend on importation of input equipment for us to process agricultural produce, or the mining machine for us to process the mineral resources that we need to export, whereby those equipment still depends on our foreign exchange. Definitely coming back into the country, that means you are importing them at a very high value. Not that alone, you are doing the paying the custom duty at a very high value as well. Until our government are able to look at what we could in the area of research and development, more especially in the area of vocational training, where all the manufacturing equipment, whereby they can be domiciled in Nigeria, whereby we can buy them at a very cheap rate. That's the only one of the best way we can talk about competitiveness. Because as we still bring all this equipment in and getting them cleared at the port, using them and looking at all the factors, logistic factors that are behind this, from the hinterland, transportation, no good roads, and insecurity. By the time we look at all this holistically, they will still contribute to a lack of non-competitiveness of Nigerian produce in the international market. That's my own just contributions. Thank you.
Thank you so very much, and thank you for making it brief within the 1 minute. We will now be having the final contributions from our speakers. We'll be giving you 1 minute each to summarize. And
Wilson had his hand on earlier.
Yes, sir?
Mr. Erumebor had his hand up earlier, I think.
Yeah, since it's going to
talk I can just use this as my 1 minute to say that, I mean, this has been an interesting session. I think, yes, I agree 100% with Mr. Boyede, all his points on the fact that we've started, this is something we should applaud, but then we've not even, the road is still long and we have a long way to go. And everything must be done holistically, from all of the processes that involves export, even to producing, incentivizing small businesses. I just wanted to quickly say that, there was a point about non-oil export and saying we've grown. I 100% disagree with that, to say that because we had, I'm wondering whether we're looking at the same NDS sheets. If you look at quarterly figures, non-oil exports, right? There was a time in 2019, I'm not even going back before 2019, in the fourth quarter of 2019, non-oil exports value was 1.08 trillion naira. In the first quarter of 2023, it's 652 billion naira. So I'm wondering how this is something we should be celebrating, especially when it's still just 10% of our total exports. By the time we add exports of services, it's even going to be much lower than that. So in my view, I don't think this is something we should be happy about as a country, especially knowing fully well that oil is not currently at its best state in Nigeria because of oil theft. So if production were to increase, that means we'll be looking at 5% or 4%, and that's something we should celebrate. I don't think so. Secondly, we say businesses are dying all over in the US and co. I mean, it's sad to hear all of these when businesses are not getting as much support as they should for Nigeria. We're talking about power issues, infrastructure, access to finance, all of these schemes on exports that are available. How many businesses are accessing all of those schemes? We're talking about inflation of 22.4%, subsidy removal, all of these will go up. So yes, businesses are dying all over the world, but the case for Nigeria, I think we need to not celebrate stories like that. It's almost like saying because everybody else is doing bad, then we should be happy with where we are. Especially given that some of the key problems that we have are not being addressed. So I think maybe I should just end there and say that there's a lot of work to do, and I'm hopeful that maybe as a team, there could be some advocacy effort to advise the current government not to make the mistakes of the past, to see that, they are very proactive and see the real sector, the industrial base, as something that would lead Nigeria and address all of these foreign exchange problems. As I always say, as it is, Nigeria is not producing enough for local production and even for exports. And there's no way we can fix our FX problem if we keep going on with this production structure that we have. Finally, somebody said Nigeria has a trade policy. I mean, I was part of the Vision 2050. In fact, if you check, I made the presentation at the Nigerian Economic Summit on the need for Nigeria to have a long-term plan in 2019. The president was there and all of the governors. We started this process. We did the medium-term plan. Where is the trade policy that you're referring? Go on the internet, check. Yes, it's approved. Is it approved to sit on the desk of government ministries? It should be out there for investors, for people to see and, understand what the strategic direction is. Maybe this is too early, but we've been on trade policy for 10 years. It's approved. Put it out there. Start the road shows. Go across countries. The AFCFTA is here. What are we doing about all of these? We need to spread out, reach out to as many people as possible, because without that, I'm sorry, I think we'll just be going round in circles. But I should say that I'm maybe beginning to be hopeful and just hoping that things will go well for Nigerian entrepreneurs and small-scale exporters. Thank you.
Thank you so very much. Yes, we have the remaining two speakers. Please jump in.
Hello?
Yes, please.
Can I jump in?
Sure.
Okay, my own conclusion is that we must commend the foreign exchange market reform, but we must understand that there are global financial market turbulence in the face of this Ukraine-Russia war and in the move of dollar recall through central bank digital currency, which is being pushed by USA. And incidentally, Nigeria is one of the countries that have been mentioned and that has signed into this digital currency. In the Nigerian context, we have the following conditions to work hard on. We have high liability dollarization. We have financial fragility and the effect on the balance sheets when liabilities are denominated in foreign currencies and our asset is in local currency. We have an unexpected depreciation. I mentioned depreciation, but the other speaker said overvaluation. I mean, it was depreciation I was talking about of the exchange rate, and it has resulted in deterioration of the bank and corporate balance sheets and threatened the stability of domestic financial system. So we must go to the drawing board and review our trade policy. As had been mentioned by Mr. Wilson, it has been reviewed. It has to be, brought out in the face of this AFTA, especially the export trade policy. This trade substitution, we have to review it. And then the high liability dollarization that has continued to create external account imbalance must be reviewed. Otherwise, we will just be turning round and round and round in a circle. It is good to float Naira, but there are so many other policy dimensions that have to be addressed to make it efficient and effective. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so very much. Engr Olowookere, you have the last word.
Yeah, just a few things to say. Really, it's I want to start with from where the Mr. I forgot the name. Mr. Erumebor, where you ended. You ended on the notes of hope, that we must have hope. And I think that is a very key thing. In this webinar, we're not celebrating anything. We're not saying we are made changes. We're not saying we are where we need to be. We are just identifying the effects of flooded in Naira as it relates to the non-oil sector. Nigeria's complex economic issues, very complex socioeconomic issues, The exports are not where they need to be. The exchange rate is not where it needs to be. The leadership is not where it needs to be. The infrastructure is not enabling. The people are not very supportive. And even the leadership has a lot to be desired. But the point we're making is that we're on the right track. We're taking measures. We're taking steps to get things back on the right footing. We're not where we need to be, but it takes a village to raise a child. We cannot leave everything in government hand. Of course, we cannot make changes to government either. But there are certain things we need to come to grips with. And let me mention something again on the point that you made earlier on, Mr. Wilson, on the new trade policy, that it should be public, it should be open to everyone to see. I don't think so. I mean, this is a policy document. It's not how people react to the policy. I mean, it's not for the people to implement it. This is what guides the government in making more strategic plans for budgeting, for planning, and for making changes to trade and the business process in Nigeria. So, but what I'm saying in too many words is that we need to have a positive mindset. America took so many years to get to where it is today. We went through the North-South War. So many people were killed. Same thing with other developed countries. Japan went through the atomic bomb episode, which all of us are aware of. They rose from the ashes of the atomic bomb in Hiroshima and Nagasaki to become a very strong power today. They were not complacent. They were not negative. They were not whiny about where they were. They rose from those ashes and became very strong. Even though Japan has very, very little in terms of export potentials. So what we're saying in too many words, just to wrap up, is we all need to roll our sleeves. We all need to be positive. We all need to work together. We all need to do our respective task at individual level or within our space of influence to make the changes necessary, and also find a way to influence government, advise government to make those changes. Then we can be where we need to be. Until then, we continue to work very hard. Thank you.
Thank you so very much. You are highly appreciated. Tomboyere, are you there, sir?
I'm here.
Okay. Yes.
I'm here, but
Before I bring you in, I just want to thank everyone again. Even though I will still take 1 minute after we finish. I just want to thank everyone today. This has been very explosive. See the time, and we are still all here. This is wonderful. It really affects all of us. And at Talking Trade and Investment Global, we're looking for solutions. We're connecting with the right people to effect the changes that are needed. And our voices are being heard. So you're not just speaking into empty space, you're actually speaking to the ears that listen and make the desired changes that we need. Please, I bring you on board again, Femi Boyede.
Thank you so much. Well, let's go back to Idi Amin, and thank you very much indeed. I'm excited that I kept checking the participants list, and seeing that people should have protested that we have overstayed our time, but instead it's even growing. So it means that we are probably on the same level, and the excitement. I picked on what Wilson said, and now in public, I say it in the presence of the public, Mr. Erumebor, please, we are coming back to you. I put on the chat box there is something that we'll be discussing with the technical team very, very soon. We will efforts to reach out to the people in the administration who are helping the government. I think we need to have a seat together where all the points that we have been raising here actually, we now have, I talked about the interministerial engagement and all stakeholder fora and what have you. I think we need to lead one as quickly as possible, where those who are actually shaping the policies and the things that this government is doing can actually be there and understand from where private sector and industry is coming, so that whatever policies are now going to be crafted will have at least an input. It's good that we have cracked economists, we have experts who have gone to Harvard, who have had this and that, but of course, it is the person who wears the shoes who knows where it pinches. And I think that we need to have a player, policymaker kind of forum, and we will try to put that together. Engineer Olowookere, Dr. Akanji, I have a few other names listed here already. We will be also identifying those that we need to bring. Wale Fasonya, DG Smedan, Ezra Yakusak of NEPC, the MD of Nexim, and maybe NAQS because of rejection. We'll draw up the list, and very, very soon. In fact, I'm putting my technical team to task now. Within the next 72 hours, at least let's do a mapping of those that should feature, and then we will use the network at our disposal to reach out, especially to those who need to hear us. On this note, I want to say a very, very big thank you. I want to say, again, I borrowed this from Mr. Wilson Erumebor today. We cannot continue allow CBN to go to, they call it ways and means. Honestly, I'm hearing that for the very first time in Nigeria. Nigeria introduced that vocabulary where CBN just goes to borrow, and then we increase, we edit the constitutional framework to allow us to borrow more. Are we going to borrow for our fourth generations yet unborn to come and clear?
What of RT200?
We will talk about that at the forum, and we would like to know. John, you have no, it's correct. It's just that we don't have time.
Was it backed by law?
RT200.
Was it backed by law?
Let me explain from what you said. It had no law, but RT200 and export expansion grant were supposed to be one and the same thing. One was established by law and transparently run with a lead published, but there was the other one where all we had was the hundreds of billions that CBN paid out to exporters who had no name under a bonus scheme. All this, of course, these are parts of the past that this government obviously has demonstrated willingness, intention, and the political will to address. On this note, again, I want to say a very big thank you. I want to appreciate my team, the best team in the world. I know the time that you put together, even behind the scenes, to make sure that we come out to play, to dance in the public once every month. The public probably doesn't know that you guys put up so many days. I appreciate you. I thank everybody, and will come your way again very, very soon. God bless you.
Okay, thank you so very much, Femi Boyede. As you see, the team is there. You see me, you see Femi, you see Adebote Oluwatomini from Nigeria, Fumi Adebote from Sweden. Dr. Tony is from London. Aruna is from Canada, Toronto, just like myself.